morning, afternoon by now, I guess. I'm pleased to be here with the bicentennial, its cabinet, staff, visitors, and beloved residents of Tallahassee. The 200-year bicentennial celebration is a time to reflect on the capital city's founding at pivotal times in history. It is a time to share stories of past struggles and triumphs, look at the present with pride and inspiration, and to the future with anticipation for new progressive things to come. Oftentimes, the word history is used without a clear meaning of the word. I have my own that is usually used. However, last week, I attended the Oasis Center for Women and Girls annual luncheon. Founder Kelly Art of that organization gave a definition of history that I was drawn to, and I asked if I could use it today, and she agreed. Kelly's definition, and I quote, "History can be noted as one eye looking ahead and one looking backwards. This is because of how tremendously slow sometimes change is. Working and fighting for things to be different can feel like being perpetually stuck without anything ever getting better, unless we look backwards so we can measure how far we've come." Close quote. People inhabited this area almost 12,000 years ago, primarily Native Americans. They established settlements, created some of the finest pottery, created the Lake Jackson mounds, which served as political ceremonial centers, and established surrounding villages and single-family farmsteads, approximately a mile east of today's capital. Europeans came into contact with the Native Americans, Appalachia, of this region in 1568. By 1607, the Appalachia invited the Spaniards to establish missions, including the administrative hub at St. Louis, you've probably heard of that, in the west section of Tallahassee. By 1704, conflicts resulted, leading to the Appalachia and Spaniards abandoning Lynn County. Settlements were also driven out by 1818. On July 10th, 1821, possession of Florida transferred officially from Spain to the U.S., ending centuries of rule over Florida by European powers. It was then that various functions of territorial and local governments were established. Historical research documents that the first historical council meeting, precursory of today's Florida legislature, that's in that building over there right now meeting, was held in 1822 at Pensacola West, and the following summer, 1823, in St. Augustine East. Extensive travel to meetings led the council to decide there should be some midway location between the two cities. So in October of 1823, Governor Duval appointed two commissioners, one from Pensacola and another from St. Augustine, to select a site for the new seat of government. Those two commissioners were Dr. William Simmons of Pensacola and John Lee Williams of St. Augustine. They agreed on a location near the abandoned Seminole village of Tallahassee, and close to a small Cascades. Then in that Cascades Park. On March 4, 1824, Governor Duval proclaimed the Legislative Council would hold its next meeting at the place called Tallahassee. Soon afterward, on May 24, 1824, Congress appropriated an entire section of federal land for use as the new seat of government for the Florida Territory. Construction began on a temporary quarter for the Legislative Council, and its first meeting was held on November 8, 1824 place called Tallahassee. As part of the session, the council officially created Lynn County from a portion of Gadsden County. In its next session, the council issued the first city charter to the city of Tallahassee and began holding municipal elections shortly thereafter, electing a mayor, and the city council was elected. Looking backward, pivotal times. In 1924, Tallahassee celebrated its 100th anniversary with a week-long Centennial Festival. 100 years ago, during the Centennial Week, there were six days designated for white events and 1 day for Negro or colored people events. Pivotal times. A Negro dance group of 17 people performed. One was the son of Edward H. Yellowhair. His name was Charlie Yellowhair. Within that dance group, Edward Yellowhair, a black male born in 1852, was a painter by trade and an AME by religious affiliation, Bethel AME Church. He died in 1926 in Lynn County. Mr. Yellowhair was a Tallahassee city councilman in 1883 and 1884 and was Tallahassee tax assessor in 1885, a pivotal time. However, given today's diverse history, much has changed as we see here at this commemoration and celebration, all for the better. We have with us today descendants of E.H. Yellowhair. We have Mrs. Barry Roberts. Barry, would you please stand? Who is the great-great niece of E.H. Yellowhair, and the great-niece of his son, Charlie Yellowhair. Mrs. Roberts occupies what was the family home of E.H. Yellowhair, located on MLK Boulevard. She still lives in the Yellowhair home. Are there any other Yellowhair descendants? One hand in the back.
To my knowledge, it's only about 15 of us left.
Okay.
The late notice, I see they weren't able to make it. But I do have my cousins here with me, my other cousins representing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. She said, oh, it's only about 15 of them still surviving. Though many of the people and voices since the centennial have been silenced, their work, contributions, and legacies live on through other inspirational leaders and people of skill and courage. New places and spaces adorn the landscape of our city. One eye looking backward to our centennial pioneers, places, and spaces, and another looking forward to bicentennial descendants, places, and spaces. We invite our residents of all persuasions to take part in and attend the numerous bicentennial events as we commemorate how far we have come, and to join in proclaiming the beauty and richness of Tallahassee 200 years later. And before I take my seat, Ms. Roberts, I want to give to you the celebratory coin of the 200-year bicentennial. And I also gave her a copy of the publication on page 80 that has Charlie Yellowhair and the dance group.
Wow, I learned a lesson today. Never followed Reverend Williams or Althemese Barnes. I want to thank Mayor Daley and the Tallahassee City Commission for inviting me here today on this historic occasion to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the founding of our beloved Tallahassee. I was asked to give a 5 to 7 minute speech on the history of Tallahassee and what the future has to offer. I know my friends are laughing and will tell you that it takes me that long just to say my name. I could stand here for hours, literally, without a prepared speech and talk about Tallahassee history, but I'll spare you that for now. I want to thank Karen Kirksey, was really contacted me and asked me to speak. But I think she was really looking for someone who was 200 years old. But being a 7th generation Tallahassean, I came close enough to fulfill that requirement. Thank you, Karen, wherever you are, for inviting me. But Mayor, please don't hold that against her. On March the 4th, and I'm going to say a little something here, but on March the 4th of 1824, Florida Territorial Governor William Pope Duval wrote a proclamation requiring the members of the legislature, the Legislative Council, to assemble for their next session at a site that on December 11, 1824, was officially named Tallahassee. It wasn't until 8 months later, 8 months after March, on December the 29th, 1824, that Leon County was formed. Many people don't realize when Tallahassee, the proclamation, this was actually Gaston County. However, I must say I find it somewhat amusing and perhaps ironic that we are gathered here at City Hall on the site formerly known as Wayne Square, which was once called Rascal Yard. Pardon me, Mayor. Some things never change. Because of my limited time, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my connection to Tallahassee history. The common joke in the Tallahassee Historical Society is, go talk to Doug, he's related to everybody in town. One of my maternal, as Mayor mentioned, one of my maternal great-grandfathers first came to Spanish East Florida in 1799 and was actually one of the founders of Jacksonville in 1822. But please don't hold that against me. Another fourth great-grandfather came to Leon County from Lawrence County, Alabama, and I can document 1828. I think they may have been here a little bit before that. With his arrival, my family connection to Tallahassee has continued for the last 196 years, and we are now in the 9th generation of Tallahasseans. In 1834, one of my uncles was one of the 110 investors in the Tallahassee Railroad, built from Tallahassee to St. Mark's. In my forthcoming book, coming out hopefully this summer, titled For the Public Good, I detail the story of my second great-granduncle, who strongly influenced the growth and the future of Tallahassee for 60 years, from 1875 to 1935. He brought about many changes to the daily lives of Tallahassee citizens, helping usher in the second industrial revolution and modern conveniences. He was instrumental in establishing the first water plant and then negotiated the deal to get the water, the gas, and the electric plants under the control of the city, which we still have city utilities today. In addition, he served on the Board of Public Works for 8 years. He incorporated the first full-fledged telephone company, donated the property for the erection of the governor's mansion, and was also instrumental in bringing roads and interstate highways to Tallahassee. In 1895, he developed Tallahassee's first planned subdivision for the black community. And he was also a founder of Tallahassee's oldest surviving bank, and a two-term member of the City Council. Many members of my family have continued to serve in positions in city, county, and state government, carrying on the tradition of serving the people of Tallahassee for the public good. And for that, I am extremely proud. This celebration today is especially meaningful to me because two of the 27 members of Tallahassee's 1924 Florida Centennial Celebration Incorporated were members of my family. In addition, my mother, who I have a photograph here, I had to put this next to me, was in the 1924 Tallahassee White Children Centennial Parade. She was 10 years old. And I had 17 other family members in that Centennial Parade. Remember, Tallahassee was still segregated and the black community had its own separate parade, as Althemese had pointed out. My mother, who died in 2015, was 101 and was one of the last known survivors who marched in that parade. However, just so you know, I have found one surviving participant in that parade, and she will be 104 years old this August. However, she regrets not being able to attend today. Florida U.S. Senator Duncan U. Fletcher, the Fletcher Building on Gaines Street is named in his honor, told the Florida Historical Society that the 1924 Centennial ought to be made a historical record. And here today, 100 years later, you are witness to history. This is an event that is better than the 1924 Centennial Celebration, an event that now includes all of the people of Tallahassee, including the indigenous native tribes who had lived in this area for centuries before us. An event your grandchildren and great-grandchildren will proudly tell their children that their ancestors witnessed and participated in. Although my family roots run deep here, my family is not the only family that tells the history of Tallahassee. There are other families that deserve to have their story told. Some who are here today, such as my friend Althemese Barnes, tell the story of the rich and diverse history of this great city. Our city's history has not always been pretty. Sometimes it's been messy and can even make some people feel uncomfortable. It was once said, to study history means submitting yourself to chaos, but nevertheless retaining your faith in its order and meaning. I was asked to comment on the future of this great city and what it might have to offer. I can only speculate. I don't have a crystal ball. But my hopes as an historian are that we educate our children and continue in the study of the history of Tallahassee and all its people. For if we don't, we are sure to repeat the mistakes that have been made in the past. We can only learn from past mistakes and modify our future behavior for the public good. I met a couple just last week who had moved here just a few months ago, and they had fallen in love with their newly adopted city. And they wanted to know more about their home that they had moved into. Without hesitation, I told them who built their home. It was built in 1939. And the history of their neighborhood. Just so happens it's 2 blocks from where I grew up. My point in telling this story is this. Here is a couple who came to Tallahassee just a few months ago. And it doesn't matter whether you just moved here or your family has been here for 7 generations. You can still love this city. So I will close with this line from a 1939 movie in which Dorothy says, there's no place like home, in which I concur. But unlike Dorothy, our home is Tallahassee. Happy 200th birthday.